important that we include the parents, and so I was really pleased when you said that, because I think that we have seen other instances outside of our district where there were conversations with students about such sensitive topics that the parents were not brought in. So I want to commend you for doing that, because I think that that's really important. I think the challenge that the folks that I've heard from the community on this is that parents didn't know until now, and not all parents are here, not all parents are aware, that this could be occurring at their campus. And I think that's the piece that is concerning. And I understand maybe we can't say this particular student, right, has this issue, but I think it's important for the community to know that this could be happening at your campus. It was happening on my daughter's campus, and I didn't know until another parent told me about it, whose son was told if he was uncomfortable that he could go use the nurse's restroom. And I think that's what's causing some of the concern of the community, is that it feels like it hasn't been transparent and people aren't aware that it's happening. I think that's one of the issues. I don't think that's the only issue, but that's one of the issues. And so, what do you say to a parent who feels like, their child's being told to go somewhere else because they're uncomfortable? And then at what point, does it become where the teachers and the administrators at the campuses are managing this, right? I mean, they're already managing so many things with our restrooms. We even got an email today about an incident in a restroom, right? So we've had a lot of incidents in the restrooms. Like, we're kind of layering a lot on our campuses, I think, to be dealing with all these things. And I will also say that I think any student who feels uncomfortable in a larger restroom for whatever reason, whether it has to do with their gender identity or it has to do with maybe some personal medical issue that they have, I think we need to work to accommodate that. So I don't know how you respond to those questions, but I just wanted to ask that.
Is that 3 questions? I'm trying to make sure that I answer all of them.
Okay, so
first of all, I'll speak to just the FERPA issue of talking about and letting others on the campus know what's happening. And we have to be very careful that we don't release any identifiable information about a student. So there could be instances where a parent might say, is this happening on the campus where my child goes to school? And the answer would be no, because that's not any personal identifiable information. But it could be that saying, yes, this is happening on your campus would be outing a student. And so we have to be it would be giving personally identifiable information about that student, which we can't do. And so we have to be very careful not to violate FERPA. We understand why it would be a concern, but we've been doing this for quite some time with a very small group of students. So we do see now that so much attention has been drawn to it that we need to put something in the student handbook. We need to make sure that our community understands the practices of the district. Secondly, monitoring the bathrooms.
Well, my other question was about, commenting to parents who maybe have concerns that they didn't know, that this was going on, and their student comes home and says, "Sure," and maybe that student's uncomfortable with that. I mean, I think that's the piece I think that hasn't been part of this discussion, is that there have been instances of students who are uncomfortable when they walk into a bathroom and find someone of the opposite sex using the restroom. It's a vulnerable.
How do they know?
Sure. Restroom, and there was a girl in there, and he was very uncomfortable using the urinal. And then there's that whole other piece, like where body parts can be exposed, and there's
trans girl in there.
There's females with female issues, right? But it's a vulnerable place to be. And so when you're dealing in some cases in middle school, so I think that's the piece that's missing is, how do we handle those parents and those students who have concerns? Because I think the answer of, well, your student then can go use the nurse's restroom, it just makes it complicated because that student's not the one with the accommodation. So how do you figure out which ones are supposed to be using the nurse's restroom?
variety of reasons. I mean, there are students that are not ever comfortable changing in front of a peer, regardless of this particular topic. How do we ensure that all of our students feel safe in the restroom? What are our accommodations beyond a transgender issue, which is, I know, what we're talking about here. But I think about students that are, everyone develops differently, and there are girls and boys that are absolutely not comfortable in our locker rooms. They're not comfortable from a TikTok challenge that went awry, that we had to shut down bathrooms, and now there are sensory issues because we don't have enough soap dispensers. It's well beyond this particular topic. How do we make sure that all of our children have the accommodations that they need to feel safe in our restrooms, the only unsupervised place on our campuses?
Right, so that's something that each campus has to work through with each individual situation. And so, Stephanie, to answer your question, that could be one alternative that was offered. And if that's not an alternative that that family feels comfortable with, then we'd have to sit and brainstorm other alternatives. And for every hypothetical situation that comes up, we have all of these hypothetical responses. So it really has to be on a case-by-case basis and working through it. And to your point, I don't think that it can just be, here's your one option. So we have to be able to find other options. And again, it's very complicated, and that's for that situation or for the situation that you're bringing up. Maybe there's a student who's just not comfortable changing in the locker room for whatever reason. And so we need to work with that family and that student to find something where that student's gonna feel comfortable at school. And that's just our charge. That's what we have to do for our kids.
So one last question, what about locker rooms? You mentioned locker rooms, so what about that? If a student is uncomfortable using a locker room based on their biological sex and they don't wish to use, or else they would change, are they allowed then in the other sex locker room to change their clothes?
We have not had a student using another locker room at all. And again, that would be a conversation where we would say, for everyone's safety and comfort level, this is what we highly recommend. Here is a changing place for you that is a private changing place. We have not gotten to the point where we've had to explore any other option than that.
I think we might need to think about it, because
Yes.
that could be coming.
Yeah, we have to think through the hypotheticals, surely, but every hypothetical situation has so many factors that we have to sit and talk it through.
Thank you.
I really appreciate what you're
Marvin,
saying.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask a few questions if you don't mind.
Well, I think I started.
I got the.
Actually,
Go for it.
this isn't a boxing match. This is just a discussion. Let's let everyone have a chance to speak. Thank you, Mr. Placey.
What I wanted to say was that, in the spirit of compromise here, I think that we're not completely on different pages. When you all say that the community deserves to know what our practices are, I absolutely agree with that. They should know that, and I applaud the email that we sent out last week that detailed those things. But for those that say, why are we just now learning about this? Why are we just now hearing about this? I spent a good part of the weekend going back over all of the emails that I've received since I got on the board in 2014. I got them all, and I looked at every one that mentioned bathroom, going back to 2014. The first one that mentioned transgender use of a restroom was sent to us in September of 2019. And it did not mention a specific instance in any of our schools or a student that attended FISD. It was a hypothetical question of what our policies are and how would we handle the situation. There was not another email that crossed my inbox until August of this year. And at 3 o'clock today, we had received 33 total. Not to say that it's not an important issue, it's a very important issue, but the point I'm trying to make is that you asked why the district is just now publishing what our practice has been. I think Mr. Lucas articulated very well that the law either doesn't exist or it's not very clear, and with different administrations, it's bounced back and forth on different regulations. And as this has moved forward, we haven't heard of any issues with our practices from anybody in the community. Nobody is bringing to the board or to the high-level administration, hold on, wait. Nobody's bringing to the board or to high-level administration that the accommodations that Ms. Miller is talking about aren't working on our campuses. And if they're not, we want to know about it. We want you to work with the campus. We want you to send an email to all of us so that we know it. But I can also tell you that of all of those emails that I mentioned, the 30-something that we have here, only one of them mentioned a specific student of a parent in our district. All the rest were either question of what our policy would be, or a stance for allowing accommodations or not allowing accommodations, but nobody else mentioned that their kid has brought home an issue. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, I'm just saying it hasn't crossed my inbox in 9 years. We want to hear about it, but hysteria needs to be based on what's actually going on in FISD, in my opinion. And if we've got issues, and if we have law to fall back upon, this board should adopt a policy. But at this point, based on everything that I've heard so far, a publishing of our existing practices is a good first step. And then we see where we go with law as it's passed either at the state level or the federal level. That's all I've got for right now.
Maybe I didn't understand. How long have we had this practice in place? What year do we adopt the first one?
It's my understanding that it has been since about 2015.
Okay, so now you've been on the board since 2009, and you weren't aware of this, is what you're saying, right? You were not aware of this, and you've been on the board since 2009?
The first time the question was ever posed to me,
Okay.
across my inbox was 2019. That's what I said.
What I'm saying is, this seems like it would be an issue that the board should take up. If you're having this practice, we should know about something about it, and we should give our input on why this is happening, or should it happen, or should it not happen. But,
I would also like to, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
no, go ahead, please.
The numbers that Ms. Miller gave just a moment ago, we're talking 50 secondary students, we're talking about less than 0.2% in the district. I'm not saying that it's not your responsibility to know these things. However, it's also parents' responsibility to let us know when they see an issue. And the point that I'm making is, if there has been an issue, a campus has handled it, and it hasn't needed to come to the board.
Can I tell you something? That you may not be aware of this, but parents have brought this to principals. They went and said, hey, look, my boy is in the bathroom, and the girl came in there. They brought it to them. Before 2019, I guess the first time you heard it, okay? The way it was handled was, I'm sorry, that's what we do here, and your boy can go use the nurse's bathroom. That's just the fact of the matter. That was a policy, and because the board has not given a solid policy, because the board hasn't come out and said, this is happening, this is our policy, we have several different schools that are doing several different things to accommodate something that the majority of the students, the parents in the community do not want. So I had a couple of questions to ask you, Karen, if you don't mind. When were the parents of the district first notified of this policy, and do you think it's important that the parents of the district should know this, what's going on?
Well, first of all, we don't have a policy, but as far as our practices, it's not been something that we've informed of all parents because we've worked with all of the individual parents.
Do you think that parents would be interested in knowing that, I have a 14-year-old, an 11-year-old girl. I would be interested in knowing if they're going to the restroom and they're taking care of maybe some feminine business, that another person, a boy, could be in there. Don't you think that most of the parents would want to know that?
Mr. Logan, when parents have contacted our campuses and asked for information, as we've said, our campuses have done a beautiful job working with
Right.
parents. on
Don't
this.
you think we should have done that first?
Mr. Lowe, I think she's answered your question. Given the communication we sent out this week, I think clearly everyone in the district knows now.
Can I tell you something? She hasn't answered my question. Period. Now, if you want to do something, say, shut up, Marvin, don't talk, don't ask any more questions, okay. But I'm not clear on what the matter is.
Ask your question one more time. Would they want
You
to
telling
know
me to ask, I can only ask one more time, is that what you're saying?
the same question?
Same question, yes.
We'll try to answer.
Well, I know decorum here, I'm trying to be right, but that is just inappropriate for you to tell me, I'm 25% of your fault. You need to remember that. And treat me. Was this unwritten policy purposely kept away from parents?
No. It was not purposely kept away from parents.
Okay. How many parents contacted the district about this unwritten policy? Opposing, how many people have you heard from? How many parents oppose this unwritten policy?
Mr. Lowe, I'd have to go back and look through my emails to be able to tell you how many have opposed it and how many have been for it as well, because it's been both.
No, I just wanted to know who's opposed it. Do you have, I don't know.
She doesn't know. She doesn't know right now. She'll get back with you.
We,
I can ask my own questions.
I'm not answering that.
I'm not, you're not hurt. I'm asking the questions. Still.
Is he 5 years old?
we received feedback from both sides.
So you have received questions from parents,
Yes,
all
sir.
opposing this.
From both sides.
And you don't, I'm not asking about both sides, I'm saying, have you gotten questions of people, of parents who oppose this policy? Simple, yes or no?
Yes, sir, you're on the leaders'
Okay.
emails, you see the same ones I do.
Okay, now,
I would also like to mention that we're all on the leaders' emails, and so we see every email that comes through to the leadership team of Frisco ISD. And we have received emails of support for crafting a policy, as Mr. Lowe is suggesting. We've also received emails in the direct opposite, that the practices within this district work, that we are providing every student with the ability to deal with a myriad of issues with dignity and respect with their campuses. So I think that distilling it down to, are parents mad that we don't have a policy, isn't really a fair argument here. Because of course there are parents that are mad we don't have a policy.
I didn't say
Just like
our
there would
parents,
be
ma'am, I'm
parents
asking,
that-
did parents
Should I
not?
finish, please? Just like we would receive the same if we didn't have a policy. So it's having these discussions, which yes, are emotionally charged, but having these discussions, but looking at it from every single angle, because we have children that are not one size fits all.
Can I finish my angle then?
He was asleep.
Okay. Does the district see a difference between transgenders and people, students suffering from gender dysphoria?
That's not something that the district has an opinion on.
So if someone, do we have any students in the district suffering from gender dysphoria?
None of your business.
That's not something that I can answer right now.
Okay, that's fair. If you don't know, that's fair. When did the district start designating bathroom use based on the latest definition of gender rather than biology?
So, as I said, dating back to about 2015, that was when we started getting, it's when it started kind of coming to light as far as in Title IX and legally. And so according to legal counsel and our advice from legal counsel, that's approximately, I wasn't in student services at that time, but looking back and talking, that's about when we started with these practices.
Now, we just talked to the district's outside counsel, and he says there's nothing illegal about using the bathroom of your gender, whatever genitalia you may have. So, is that, why can't we do that?
So it's our understanding that, and of course, we try to suggest for students who don't want to use that restroom, to use a private restroom, or it's our understanding if that is not something that's acceptable to that family, that we would not be providing equal access and we would be in violation of Title IX. That's our understanding, and that's what we've received from legal counsel. But I understand what you're saying,
Just
Mr.
here,
Lowe.
just says that's not the case. The next thing, does the district have a position on how many genders there are?
The district does not have.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because I'm learning.
Mr. Lowe, Lucas has asked to address her last comment.
If you don't mind, I just wanted to interject one thing, just if you don't mind.
Okay.
And that is, again, these regulations are a question about enforcement. And every administration has a different priority about what they enforce with regard to federal regulations. And so the anticipation, and of course, administrations changed in after 2015, 2016, and then changed again a couple of years ago. And so with these new regulations coming out, the signal is that the Office for Civil Rights is going to be the enforcement mechanism for those regulations, and that likely under this administration, those individual accommodations would be required, and that OCR would pursue those vigorously. Again, pursuit of enforcing regulations is something that does change, and as has been mentioned up here already, districts take stances on these issues, and then there are legal steps that they go through after that. So I just wanted to clarify that that's
The bottom line is, all that stuff might happen in the future, but as of right now, we don't have to go by that, correct?
I'm not aware of any OCR complaint, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, but I'm just not aware of any OCR complaint against the district regarding this issue right now.
I have two more questions and we can move on. How do you think ending this unwritten policy would affect transgender students in our district?
I'm not going to speculate that.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious, do you know the effect that this has had on students who are in the district who are not transgender, but who discover someone of the opposite sex in their bathroom?
I understand when parents come to us and share their concerns on both sides. I understand what their families are going through when they share their concerns.
I understand.
I also understand that transgender students are more likely to be bullied and depressed. And
And I'm being very genuine. I really care about the transgender students. Students in general. Every life is precious. That's what my faith tells me. But we're talking not about whether a life is precious or not. We're talking about how to navigate these issues that have just changed in the last 5 years. Most of the parents aren't aware of this unwritten policy that is going on, and most of the parents would object to this. So how do we accommodate less than 1% of the whole student population? Why are we changing all of our rules for less than 1% when we know that more than 1% are going to be
Clear them so that you can speak.
so we are adhering to our mission of knowing each of our students by name and need, and that's what we're doing. We're making sure that we're working with all of our students so that they feel safe and supported.
Yes, Mr. Clayson.
I really feel compelled to say at this moment, when you talk about less than 1% of our students, as a trustee, you're elected to represent every kid in the body.
Yes.
That accommodations can be made that please the community, the campus, the family.
They don't.
Aaron, I just had one more question, because something you said made me think of something. Were the FERPA regulations, were those disbanded or suspended during COVID? Because I remember I was getting all those emails that there was a kid in my daughter's class that had COVID, so it was okay to inform the parents about that. So were there separate FERPA laws in regards to COVID?
So that was the school district choice to do that. That was something that we were required to do.
Got it.
Mr. Stockton, I think, is going to respond to
Thank
that.
you.
Just, there's a specific exception to FERPA for health and safety, and that's what was utilized. Public health and safety, it's talking about disease, it's pretty clear.
I did want to add one more thing, and then I was going to, I think Ms. Davis had something that she wanted to say. I did also, I wanted to mention, in the course of the last week, and I knew this was going to be on the agenda, I reached out to a HR director, chief human resources officer, just for a private company that's national, but based here in Texas, to see what their policies are. I know it's not a school system, but it was interesting for me to learn that they feel that they are in the same boat as school systems in that they make individual accommodations, they don't have a law to fall back upon, and therefore they don't have a written policy.
And I guess one thing I'd like is for us to come up with a written policy as a trustee of the board of trustees.
Well, I would add that I did start my original comments by saying that we did have common ground there, and whether it's a formal policy, whether it's student handbook, as long as it is written and our practices are there for everyone to see, which I think happened last week, but could go further, that would satisfy me as well. I don't know that we'll get to the same definition, Marvin, but there is some common ground.
Yeah, and I'm just saying the reason why people are upset about this is because this has been going on for 7 years, and the board has not taken the initiative to form some type of policy that's acceptable to the community. Thanks.
President Archibald, I totally get what I was going to share this evening concerning this agenda item. Before I do, I want to ask Ms. Miller if I'm understanding this correctly. Title IX prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and I learned today, sex characteristics.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, and this was, I know that this, what took place in June of 2021 was an amendment from something that took place originally in 1972, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I want to focus on the word discrimination. And I know that this is very unpopular. This is a very unpopular opinion. And I want to focus on this word today because after hearing from everyone on this dais, I felt the need to share my heart concerning not just this subject, but what will become of this subject if we continue to go back and forth and debate whose side is right. I'm disappointed that in 2022, we're having the same type of conversation concerning discrimination. 68 years ago, that's the age of my mother, trustees, IST members, those that are sitting here on this dais with me or alongside me could not use the same bathroom. Yep. We could not sit in the same classrooms. 56 years ago, African-American students here, right in Frisco, ISD, did not attend the same school with their white peers. They attended the Hamilton School until the end of segregation in 1965. That was 2 rooms, split in half, no running water, outhouses, and restrooms. They used books from their all-white school. As a district, we've come a long way with 2 sitting African-American trustees, the first being just 2 years ago. Yet, here we are again today, deciding what specific group of human beings deserve what. When we initially received this inquiry, I did my own research, and many of the questions that I had for this evening have been answered. The first was, who decides where this population of students can use the restroom on our campuses? And if you could reiterate that, that would be amazing. I know that we have had a lot of dialogue and conversation, but I really want to just stick to the facts.
Ultimately, it would be the parents who help us make that decision.
And who within the district works with that parent group to ensure that those accommodations are made?
The campus.
The campus administrator?
Yes, the campus
counselor?
administrator, the counselor, yes.
All right. How are all FISD students protected and ensured safety? That's a major concern of mine. Not just students that are part of our transgender population, but students that want to go to the restroom and they go in to their peers having sex, or vaping, or having fights, or creating TikToks, among a laundry list of other things that have taken place that we really could be talking about today, in addition to what Mr. Lowe has shared. I am thankful for you, Ms. Miller. Thankful for the staff members that answered my call, that answered my questions. So I wanna make sure that I understand this last thing, and that is, how many student incidents have we had on this topic?
Specifically to bathroom safety or transgender students in the bathroom?
Both.
Okay, so when we pulled the data for discipline incidents in restrooms for last school year, there were 361 incidents that took place in a restroom. So that's across the district, that's 73 campuses.
Okay, of those 361 incidents, how many were related to transgender bathroom use?
None of them.
Let me say this, and again, this is not popular. I wanted to get to the factual information. I know that this, you all have shared that this is very emotionally charged. I'm a facts-oriented person. I really wanted to just know the numbers of the incidents that we've had. You've given us 361, 0 of which are transgender. I want to make sure, just as John shared and as Mr. Loa shared, that we ensure that every student within Frisco ISD feels safe. And if that means that we need to add additional work groups to make sure that the appropriate procedures and policies are in place, then we should absolutely do our due diligence by making sure that happens.
I can tell you something that Mr. McClendon and all the IST has worked on with our campus principals is overall safety specifically related to the restrooms. So conversations about we need to have restrooms actively monitored specifically during passing periods at all times, all of the restrooms monitored. That means hearing what's happening, being able to intervene if you need to. Principals have come up with other ways. They know that if they look at the discipline data, that they can target hotspots in areas they can see. So this is where we're having more incidents on campus here or there. So they know that that's where they can put people to specifically monitor. So it is something that we are aware of, campus principals are aware of, assistant principals, and they're being very intentional. We're also putting stop it posters in each of our restrooms on all campuses to ensure that students know that they can report anything that might be happening. And there are some other things that principals have brought to us that they're doing as well. So it's an intentional conversation and ensuring that this is happening.
Thank you. Board, any other questions for Ms.